In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, Leif Thulin is going to share his biggest risers from the first month of the college basketball season. Stay tuned and find out which prospects are climbing up Leif's personal draft board. Big shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Rafael Barlowe, along with my co-host, the man that watches more college basketball than anyone else, Leif Thulin. He just told me off the air that he is not getting enough sleep. I am not surprised. But before we get into this episode, I want to let you know that it is sponsored by FanDuel. And with FanDuel, you can start the season with a big return, and new customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Right, in this episode, we're going to talk about a few prospects that Leif feels like they are rising, whether it's his personal draft board or through the eyes of NBA scouts. But I want to talk to you about the Locked On newsletter real fast. Your favorite Locked On podcast has a newsletter. Check it out at lockedondaily.com. The newsletter will be delivered to your inbox every single day, covering your favorite team. So whether it's Locked On Lakers, who just lost by 40 points last night, Locked On Knicks, Heat, Mavs, so on. Check it out, lockedondaily.com. And please subscribe, like, share, comment, hit the bell, so you can be notified every time we drop, and that will help us grow the channel because we are your source, daily source for NBA draft content. All right, Leif, let's get right into it. You look a little tired. You say you were up late last night watching games.
Every night. There's too many good basketball games. There's shows to watch, work to do. I'm a sleepy guy, but I'm here. I'm ready to go talk about some risers. And all these guys have played recently and in big games on high marquee television. So I really enjoyed that as opposed to having to scour for these games.
I am glad that we are starting to get like some really good matchups. And I'll be honest, I was getting tired over the first 2 weeks of the season of whether it was agents, dads, managers, trainers texting me like, hey, my man's a lottery pick. You see what my guy is doing. You got to check him out. Everything I'm hearing is he's going to be a first round pick. And now that we've seen like tougher competition, some of those guys, they're not looking as good as they did when they played against some of the really smaller directional schools. So on a personal note, I'm glad about that because I was getting bombarded with videos and clips of guys like really looking good against weaker competition. So anyway, let's talk about the first player that comes to mind for you when you talk about someone that you believe is rising up draft boards or your personal draft board, or maybe even has exceeded your expectation.
I've been really impressed with Kasparas Jakucionis. And I know he was a highly regarded prospect. Some people even had him top 10 prior to the season. But I watch him play, and he's a smooth operator. What's the most dangerous thing in basketball right now? It's people who can shoot off of the pick and roll on a live dribble and create for others. He's got prototypical guard size. I really love the way that he operates. He creates for Tomislav Ivicic. He's able to get others involved. Will Riley is shooting 50% from three. And some people regard him as the better prospect because he's younger. But the reason Will Riley is shooting 50% from three is because of the passing ability of Jakucionis against Arkansas, all the athletes that they had. Granted, I don't think Calipari knows how to coach or scout because they what's Illinois good at? Shooting threes, and what did they let them do? Only shoot threes. So I don't know what Arkansas was doing, but they had all sorts of athletes. The scheme kept changing and trying to guard Kasparas Jakucionis, and he torched them. Every moment it got closer, he had a big shot. He was able to create off the live drill for others, score when he wants. And I'm just a believer in his shot and his creativity. Do I think he's a good defender? Probably not at the NBA level. But does he have all the intangibles and the things we desire when evaluating someone as a potential pick-and-roll operator at the NBA? I think he checks all those boxes and then some.
Yeah, Kasparas Jakucionis is a 6'6" freshman point guard for Illinois who is from Lithuania, played last year in FC Barcelona's system. He's averaging 13 points per game, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. I definitely think we're going to see a triple-double from him at some point in this season. Stuffs the stat sheet. Do you think he's a starting NBA point guard? I personally think, and me and my brother James agree on this, I think that he is going to be a 10-year player. I don't know if he is a starting NBA point guard.
I mean, I think it depends what team takes him and how the team's built and what they do as a team in terms of everyone's shooting a lot more threes, but some teams do it in different ways. Some teams attack closeout, some teams use the pick and roll to create. So I think if it's a pick and roll heavy team, he could start. If it's not necessarily a pick and roll heavy team, I think it becomes more difficult for him to infiltrate a starting lineup because then his greatest skill set is less desirable for that specific team. But I think he can become a starter. I don't mind that logic of him being a guy who makes it in the long term because of his intangibles, his shooting and his skill set. But I think he can become a starter, and I think he's got more potential than most players in this draft should he find the perfect system. But he is someone you need to pinpoint the right system for.
Any concerns about his lack of assertiveness sometimes? I think that he is a pass-first point guard. He knows how to run a team, get guys in the right place. But I feel like there are times where he's really not assertive and looking for his shot. And I think he becomes more dangerous when he is being aggressive as a scorer because I think it really opens up his passing a little bit more.
Yeah, I think he's not as aggressive as I think he could be. I think in the bigger games that he's played so far, he has shown aggression and scored well. So that bodes well. But I'm curious to see how that translates to Big Ten play when the scouting reports get more in depth for each team and there's better familiarity. So that's something I'll be monitoring. I think Illinois has got the talent to be a team that cracks the top 4 of that league. And that league has a lot of kind of rugged, typical Big Ten physical teams. And Illinois is zigging while everyone else is zagging. They're going to spread you out, shoot a bunch of threes. And I think that could look appealing to teams as he's able to score, assuming he's able to score against physical teams. But yeah, I think aggression. And I think it's interesting. Yegor Demin is someone who I think you could compare to Jakucionis in the way that they play. Demin's bigger and I think a better, more twitchy athlete. But I think Jakucionis is a better scorer today. He's someone who can score more naturally coming off of the pick and roll, whereas Demin's just a unbelievable passer, and he's a little better going towards the rim. Demin's made 19 of 23 layups going towards the rim, so he's not impacted by athleticism at the college level thus far.
Who, Demin?
Yeah, Demin's been excellent finishing at the rim up until yesterday's game.
Yeah, I feel like he hasn't been able to get there as easily the last few games. All right, as far as Jakucionis, he was a player that I think he's played about what I expected. He hasn't exceeded my expectations by any means, but he's done what I expected. I've had a chance to watch him live, and I've scouted him for a while, so he's doing what I thought he could do. One of the concerns I did have was how he would fare in Big Ten play, and we haven't got there yet, but I think he's passed the test against Power 5 opponents so far. But I want to switch to a player that has exceeded my expectations, and he's on your list as far as biggest risers, and it is Alabama's Labaron Philon. I like him a lot. I would take him in the first round, in the first half of the first round, to be honest. But what are your thoughts on Philon? And I think he outplayed Jakucionis when they matched up a few weeks ago, or maybe it was a week and a half ago.
He did. He also is on the better team, though. I think that's important to recognize in terms of his team has a bunch of weapons, so he wasn't as high on the scouting report, and he took advantage of it because Mark Sears was taken out of the game, and both in terms of Illinois scouting report, and he actually took himself out of the game, and Philon had it cooking. Philon's a lightning bolt, man. He's super quick. He gets to the paint at will. And he knocks down jump shots more frequently than guys we typically say, oh, that guy's so fast. Like, it's because now people are going to sag off him because he can't shoot. Well, Philon can make shots. I was a little concerned about the fit between he and Mark Sears when they started playing together. And there was injuries coming into the season for Grant Nelson, Latrell Wrightsell, who unfortunately just went down for a season-ending injury.
Hmm.
But Philon makes Alabama even more dynamic because not only will they play fast as a team, he can play slow for him, and he's lightning fast, and he's able to get to the paint and create with his individual talent as opposed to relying on just drive and kick. He can do it off of pick and roll. He can do it off of taking the ball out of the net, and he can do it just streaking up on misses where they just outlet the ball to him, and he creates instant offense for everyone. I've been impressed with his ability to finish near the rim, and I'm not fully sold on his shooting ability, but I didn't have him as a first rounder coming to the year. I knew he was quick, but I didn't realize what he could do on a basketball court for a team as good as Alabama. I kind of thought he'd be the 8th or 9th man, and now he's one of their best players, and that deserves 1, respect, and 2, recognition of the draft board. I'm curious to see what type of team he'd thrive on in the NBA because he is lightning fast, and I'd love to see him get a true chance to operate, but they also have an All-American returning in Mark Sears, so I think it handcuffs him a little bit in terms of the dynamism we could be talking about in terms of volume of scoring and assists.
Yeah, even though I'd say that he is one of the bigger surprises because I didn't see him as their starter, but I had heard during preseason that Alabama people around the program are like, he might be out of here after 1 year. All right, coming up next, we're going to dig a little bit deeper into Philon, but we're also going to talk about Drake Powell and Dylan Harper. All right, let's talk about our new sponsor, Chime. And we all know what it's like around the holidays when you spend too much money and your finances take a hit. Have you ever had to borrow money from your savings, or you added a lot more debt than you planned to due to holiday expenses, whether it's traveling or buying gifts for your loved ones, your kids, or even yourself? It usually takes a pretty significant amount of time to recover from your holiday spending. We've all been there and spending more than we should during the holidays. Well, now you can take control of your finances by using Chime. Chime is a checking account with features like no monthly maintenance or low fees. You have fee-free overdrafts up to $200, and you can get paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit. So check it out at chime.com. The good thing about Chime is it helps with fee-free overdraft up to $200. Your next deposit is applied to your balance. You can get spotted on debit card purchases and cash withdrawals. There are no monthly fees or maintenance fees, and they have over 50,000 free ATMs. So set up your direct deposit in your Chime account. After qualifying for direct deposit of $200, Chime will notify you to enroll in SpotMe. So enjoy your holidays and keep your financial goals on track with Chime. Open your account in 2 minutes at chime.com/NBA. That is chime.com/NBA. And the banking service and debit card provided by Bancorp Bank NA or Stride Bank NA, members FDIC. SpotMe eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Direct deposit timing depends on submission of payment file. Boosts are available to eligible Chime members enrolled in SpotMe and are subject to monthly limit fees. Fees apply at out-of-network ATMs and OTC withdrawals. All right, second segment, we left off talking about Labaron Philon. I really like him a lot, especially after the Illinois game. I was like, okay, this guy I think he's going to be a first-round pick. I like the way that he plays with speed, but he also has good pace. He just makes things happen. I know that's probably not the most eloquent description, but he makes things happen when he's on the floor, whether it's a steal, whether it's, an assist, or just an impactful guy when he's on the floor. Then he had 2 really, really struggle games. He had the game against, was it Houston, where he went 0 for 9 and only had 1 point. And then he had the Rutgers game where he was limited to 12 minutes and scored 4 points. But he's bounced back with back-to-back games over quality opponents, Oregon and North Carolina, scoring 15 points each, and was efficient from the floor. What range do you see him in? And then would you take him over a guy like Nolan Traore as of today?
I don't think I'd quite take him over Nolan just because Nolan's bigger and he Not by a ton, though. Philon's deceptively big. He's 6'4", and like he's very thin. But Nolan has demonstrated at the professional level he's got an understanding of pace. And Philon's demonstrated he's got tremendous pace in terms of top gear, but also, like you mentioned, to switch your pace. I'd probably go at the highest 10, but I think probably 10 through 20 for me. I think that's probably where he'll end up going as well, because I don't see him sticking around in Tuscaloosa. He's too dynamic. He's going to be able to be drafted in the first round. And I think the biggest thing is he's shooting 27% from three, which is not going to make a lot of scouts thrilled, but 71% from the line as a freshman. Those numbers aren't terrifyingly bad, but they're not exactly what you want. So there is room to grow about him. And then all the refinement of passing, like he's able to contribute assists on a team that has an All-American point guard already. And that makes me happy. And so I think if you were to give over the reins, I think you're going to see a few more turnovers, a few more games where you're like, wow, like his shot selection's not great, but you're also going to see the highs of, oh my goodness, we can't keep this guy out of the paint. Let's get him some buckets and let's get everyone else three balls. And I think the NBA spacing would be great for him.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. All right, let's talk about Drake Powell. Drake Powell, the freshman wing for North Carolina. I had him as a lottery pick entering this season. I don't think, I shouldn't say I don't think. He's not there right now. Not necessarily his fault, just not getting a lot of opportunities. He's had one game scoring over double figures, just one game, and that was an 18-point game. But you have him as one of your biggest risers. I'm curious to know why.
Well, I came in pretty skeptical about Drake Powell in terms of his lottery stock. I thought he was a second-round pick coming into the year, but I just watch him defend, and the way he moves is unbelievable. He floats on the court. He sprints faster than everyone. He slides faster. He jumps higher, and he knocks down corner threes. And I think he's got more than just 3-and-D potential. And I've said this before. I think 3-and-D's become a little overrated in the last couple of years, where everyone's like, oh, he can knock down threes and he's long, like therefore he's a 3-and-D. And then there's some that are in the mold of the Michael Porter Jr., where you shoot really well and you're not very good defensively. And the others are you hope to emulate Herb Jones. But Herb Jones was a point guard. Like the 3-and-D is becoming overvalued because you're losing versatility. What I like about Drake Powell is he's got more in his bag than he's been able to show. And he's shooting 44% from three. He's an excellent athlete. I think he makes the right decisions on the basketball court. I think he's a better prospect than his teammate Ian Jackson, who puts up more volume, who scores more easily. But he doesn't hold the ball. He doesn't stop it. He runs to the corner, knocks down his shots. He slashes. He rebounds. I don't think he's a lottery pick either. But considering I had him in the second round coming into the season, I watched him play a few of these games, and he moved me in terms of just the intangibles of what he does and the undeniable athleticism. I think he's a top-tier athlete in this draft.
Yeah, no, I like him. I had concerns about the fit at North Carolina coming into the season. When I did my big board 1.0, I broke down, like a bio or my thoughts on each player. And then for every player, my top 25, I wrote what I would like to see from them through the 24-25 season. And for some guys, it was, can they make jump shots? Or some guys, can they, prove that they have an NBA position? And for him, it was, what is his role going to be at North Carolina? To me, it still feels a little undefined in a sense. I definitely think he has a lot more than he can show. But my question right now is he going to get the opportunity to show it? The Michigan State game, you saw like what he's capable of. But I think he needs more minutes. And I just thought the fit at North Carolina was odd, knowing that they were going to bring like some veterans back, but they're 4-4. And I think at 4-4, if you're North Carolina, that can be a call for change. And for me, it would start with getting Drake Powell more minutes. All right, Dylan Harper. I know you were high on him coming into the season. And for me, I can agree that he has been better than I thought he would be. Harper's 6'6", 215, playing at Rutgers. I think that there's a legitimate chance that he can challenge for the number one pick. I know some people tend to think that it's over, like the race is over for number one, but I actually think that it's going to go down to the wire. Harper's averaging 24 points, 4.5 rebounds, 4.6 assists. Ooh, try saying that fast. Shooting 51% from the floor, getting to the foul line at a ridiculous rate. But what has it been for you that has made him a riser in your opinion?
He's just more polished than I realized. Like, I knew he was big. I knew he was skilled going to the rim. I knew his 3-point shot was the question mark. And so all those things maybe still ring true, but he's very adept at finishing in traffic. He's very adept at stopping in the mid-range. He's polished near the hoop. He's polished when being pressured. He finds a way to navigate that well. He's obviously a focal point of defenses, and not all freshmen handle that very well. Well, he's played against Alabama, and he's played against teams that have the athletes that resemble that of the NBA, and he's shined in those moments. He shined in a close game against Notre Dame. I think he's better than I realized because I was so infatuated with the upside of Ace Bailey that in my mind, I had to compare them. And I was like, well, if they were both there after flag, I'd take Bailey because he could be T-Mac, like something grandiose like that. Whereas Harper, to me, was, like if you give him the ball, I like someone who has the ball more frequently, but does he have that top tier scoring potential? And the answer so far has been he more reproducibly scores than Ace Bailey. Ace Bailey is a tremendous shot maker on a difficult shot diet, but I just love the way that Harper creates for himself at such a reproducible level. And I've been impressed with the polish and the maturity of the way he scores.
Yeah. I mean, one of the concerns I had was the athleticism, and it's a unique athleticism. It's not like VJ Edgecombe, but I really haven't seen too many people stop him from getting to the rim. But now what I've kind of chalked it up is that maybe on the high school level, he was a little bored. He wasn't going 100%. Not saying that in a bad way, but he could dominate high school level on cruise control. And we've seen him at his best in, some of the bigger games, and teams just haven't really been able to keep him out the paint. And the jump shot is still a work in progress. But if he gets that going, and then I factor in what he's going to look like with NBA spacing, I think that he's going to be dynamic, and it's going to be, in my opinion, a real race to be the number one pick in the 2025 NBA draft. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk about Tre Johnson, another player who Leif feels like is one of the biggest risers, and Adou Thiero, who has really, really turned the corner this year. But before we get into the last and final segment, let's talk about FanDuel. And you can tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, which is America's #1 sports book right now. If you're a new customer, you can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, and it is all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more. And it is on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports book partner of the NFL. All right, let's talk about Tre Johnson. Tre had another good performance against NC State last night. We did an episode on Tre after the first game against Ohio State. And why is Tre one of the biggest risers for you?
I just think he can score no matter the situation. I told you right after that game I think he's unbelievably talented, but I hate the shots he's taking. I still agree with that statement that I said. I think he's still shooting very difficult shots, but he's making enough of them that it's becoming the thing where, you know what, if he's going to shoot those eventually, it is in his career playing basketball, and he's taking them now, I don't have as much of an issue because he'll still score enough of them that one day he'll refine his shot selection and he's going to become an unbelievable scorer. I was talking with a friend last night who swears he thinks Tre Johnson's going to score 30 in the NBA. And I don't think that's the craziest thing ever. Like, the fact that that's not the craziest take ever and there's not much, oh, come on, you got to be kidding me in there, that speaks highly enough to him about being a top 4 pick. I'm not overly sold on Ace Bailey necessarily being better than Tre Johnson right now. Like Tre Johnson, to me, was a top 10 guy coming into the year that I didn't know enough about how good he was as a scorer. I knew he was a big guard. I knew he was someone who could create shots for himself. But he's a polished scorer, and he gets better shots than Ace Bailey, but he just elects to choose bad ones. Ace Bailey doesn't have the handle. He doesn't have the separation ability. He just rises over right now, and he's 6'10", and he's very gangly. Tre Johnson's more built into his body, even though he's still thin, and he shoots difficult shots, but he can create better shots than the ones he takes. And I'm sold. I mean, he's a top 4 guy for me right now.
Yeah, Tre has been Tre. I've watched him for years since he was in high school, so he's doing what I expect him to do. 6'6", 190 pounds, freshman guard from Texas. And like when you talk about his frame, 6'6", 190, I feel like that is all like very recent. Like just 2 years ago, he probably looked like he was 165. Long arms. I mean, he's a bucket. Like he is a professional scorer. Like the ability to make and just difficult shots look routine is something that he's been able to do for a while. And he's averaging 21 points per game, rounding up, about 3 rebounds, 2 assists. But he's shooting 47% from the floor, but also 44% from 3 on a good volume of attempts. I think it's like 7 attempts per game from 3. He's also shooting 85% from the line. One of the knocks on him is you would like to see him apply more rim pressure and get to the foul line a little bit more. I think there's still areas of his game that he hasn't completely shown. I think he's a much better passer than he gets credit for. And so I think that, top 4, I don't think like you're crazy for putting him that high.
I think, so here's the thing. I was reading an article from Sam Vecini, who's very good at The Athletic, and he said that if he were to bet on who's the number 1 pick, if it's not Cooper Flagg, like if that were to happen, he'd say Yegor Demon. I'm not sure I'd take Yegor Demon over Tre Johnson, because Tre Johnson and Demon are different players. Demon's a ball creator. He's a passing extraordinaire, the best passer in this draft. He's 6'8", 6'9", and that's all desirable. But Tre Johnson might score 30 in the NBA and is a better passer than he shows in college basketball. And I think I might take Tre Johnson higher. So right now I have Tre Johnson at 4. I still have a slight nod to Ace Bailey. I might even move him ahead of Ace Bailey, and then Yegor Demon's my number 5. So the fact that a guy as reputable as Sam Vecini is saying that a lot of sources are saying Yegor Demon is the guy that's number 1, and I think that Tre Johnson's better, I think really bodes well for the depth at the top of this class, but also just how good Tre Johnson is.
Yeah, I like Yegor. I do think that he literally feasted off of weaker competition leading up to Feast Week. And I think that, if you watched him just based off the last 3 games, it would be hard to put him at number 4. And I'm a big Yegor fan. I mean, I had him at number 9 before the season started. But I do think that he's come down to earth a little bit. And I think with Tre, you don't really, I guess if you have concerns, it's about the shot selection. But when you're efficient with tough shots, then it can seem like you're nitpicking. With Yegor, he's always been a guy that people have kind of labeled as a shooter. But if you just look at his numbers prior to BYU, he was an inconsistent shooter. Now the shot looks good, but it doesn't go in at the clip that you'd expect. But he has been a better passer than I thought, and he's looked good. But I could see how you could have Tre ahead of him. All right, let's wrap up with Adou Thiero. I feel like they changed the pronunciation. It was pronounced one way at Kentucky. He goes to Arkansas, and now it's switched. Is it Thiero?
I heard Thiero the last broadcast, but it used to be Thiero.
Yeah. We'll call him T. He is, in my opinion, I agree with you on this, one of the biggest risers. He's having like a breakout year, averaging 17 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists while shooting 59% from the floor. He's 6'8". He's athletic. He's like the combo forward that teams are looking for. And he's been good in some of Arkansas's best games. I mean, the Illinois game, he had 26 points. He had a big game against Baylor. He wasn't the most highly touted of all the transfers and prospects that followed Cal, whether you're a recruit or a current player from Kentucky to Arkansas, but he's been the best in my opinion. I don't think it's been close.
Yeah, he's been the best player on Arkansas of the transfers by a mile. I think you could argue for Boogie Fland over him in terms of overall, but it would still be an argument. All he's got to do is shoot better because he's got the perfect build you in the lab NBA wing body. Like, he is long, he's explosive, he's athletic, he's coordinated. He just doesn't shoot well. I mean, he shot 20 free throws against Illinois. 20. You don't see big guys do that ever. You don't see the best guards in the country. And he's a wing slasher who made it all happen on the inept Arkansas game plan. Like, I'll say this again and again. I think Calipari's terrible. But one thing he is good at is instilling confidence. He instills confidence in his players. And Adou Thiero got the confidence to attempt 20 free throws because he attacked the rim with unabashed confidence. He goes to the rim, gets there, but he made 12 of 21, I believe. Like, that's not good enough. And then he shoots threes, and you see that shooting touch. I worry about the shooting touch, but he's a tremendous athlete, really good defender. He was like the 4 grit and glue guy for Kentucky last year when they played their best with Reed Sheppard and Dillingham. He was their only defensive presence. He would often play. He's dealt with back injuries. He's dealt with all sorts of confidence blows, in my opinion, where his role gets reshifted. But he's the guy right now that is putting it together, and he's a interesting maturation process. There's a couple of these every year in the draft where they take a circuitous route or their playing time's infrequent. It's not steady. And then they find a year where they get a frequent playing time and a little more belief, a little more stipend to shots. And he's the guy who's been the biggest recipient of belief from Calipari, and I would say the guy who's taken the most advantage of a newfound role in the entire country.
Yeah, what's interesting about his shooting touch is, I just use the free throw line, for example. The 3 games prior to the Illinois game where he attempted 21 free throws in a game, which is crazy. If he did that over 4 games, you would say, man, he's been really aggressive. But in 1 game, 21 free throws is crazy. But before that, he had a 3-game stretch where he shot 20 free throws and he made 18 of 20 in those 3 games. And then he was 12 of 21 against Illinois. But overall on the season, I'll say this much. The shooting, I feel like the shooting has improved, even though the shooting percentage is down. Like, he was a very reluctant shooter the first 2 years at Kentucky, attempted less than 1 3 per game. Obviously, the minutes have increased, but he's attempting 2 a game. Now, he's only shooting 22% from 3, which is not good. But I think that it is it's a level of progression when he's not passing them. Now, he's still getting to the rack. He's still being aggressive and going downhill, but the volume is up. Of course, you want the percentage to go up. He's shooting 64% from the line. I guess a lot of that is based off of the poor game, but he shot 80% from the free throw line last year. So with all that being said, I don't know what to make of his shooting touch, but if he can improve it and show some consistency as a shooter, I mean, I think that you can see him as a name that kind of skyrockets even more around draft time, because I think that if he knocks down shots in pre-draft workouts, along with, the defensive potential and the energy that he plays with, and like you said, his NBA body and size, I do think that there's a team that could be pretty high on him, especially as you get to, maybe like right outside the lottery. I think some teams are going to be looking for guys that can come in and play a role right away, as opposed to developing. And I think he could be someone that we see in the first half of the draft.
Yeah, he forces the action. I mean, look, he's scoring 18 points a game on an SEC school that was supposed to be Janelle Davis's breakout party. Like, he's been the best player on that team, like in a holistic sense. Boogie Fland has a claim, but Thiero does it on both ends. I think his sheer productivity is going to get him a first-round pick, and it's going to take someone who believes in their shooting program to take him higher than, right outside the lottery. But I think he's got to claim 15 through 25, and maybe, just maybe, cracks the back end of the lottery for a team who believes, hey, we want an athlete who can impact the game right away because he's got the physical capabilities right away. And you know what? His shot, like, it doesn't look broken. The arc's good, the rotation's solid. So maybe someone believes in the stroke more, and he follows the same path of Ryan Dunn, who really struggled shooting the ball at Virginia and instantly shot the ball better. And I know it's regressing, but still, like, no one in a million years would have seen that path.
Yeah. Yep. All right. That wraps up this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast. But stay tuned for the next episode. Leif is going to share his biggest fallers. This is an episode you do not want to miss. But before we go, I want to talk to you about the Locked On newsletter. Check it out at lockedondaily.com. Your favorite Locked On NBA podcast has a newsletter. Again, lockedondaily.com. Once again, thank you for making this your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Rafael Barlowe, along with Leif Thulin, and we are out of here.